Postgame show brought to you by the Loewy Law Firm. Oklahoma State 32, Texas 24. Welcome to the chat room. I will allow everybody here to vent. It will be interactive. It will probably be wild. Anwar Richardson will join us from DKR as soon as Steve Sarkisian is done putting the ribbon and bow on a press conference that should be something. I'll say that again. The Longhorns lose 32-24 today at DKR. It's going to be a post-game show. We'll probably be going, I would imagine, for around the next 2 hours or so. Come on in. The water is warm. We won't run from it. This was a game that if you're the Texas Longhorns, you can't lose. It was absolutely inexcusable. It was, in a lot of ways, a repeat of what we saw not just last week against Oklahoma. That part is absolutely obvious. I think the most alarming thing is that from a culture standpoint with this program, the Longhorns don't – I mean, that looks like the kind of game that Tom Herman might lose. That looks like the kind of game that the Texas Longhorns over the course of the last decade have been losing with Mack Brown, with Charlie Strong, although they didn't lose by 30, so it wasn't quite like Charlie, but certainly like Tom Herman and then Steve Sarkisian for all of the conversation about culture and the changes that this program is trying to make under Steve Sarkisian. It's really hard to say at this point that the culture of this program has changed yet under Steve Sarkisian. An absolutely inexplicable loss today. This was a Texas football team. You know, forgive me for laughing. The Longhorns were at 17-3 in a position where they were, I mean, just an incomplete pass away from likely going up 20-3. They probably, given what they were doing on offense before they get down inside the 20, you know, if you're able to cash that in and get 7 points, you're up 24-3. But at worst, that should have been about a 32-yard field goal. You're up 20-3. Oklahoma State has nothing going offensively, and suddenly you're up by 3 scores. And Casey Thompson throws a pick six that changes the game. And yet we get to the fourth quarter, and it took 50 minutes in this game for Oklahoma State to score a touchdown on the offensive side of the ball. But as soon as it did, and while they couldn't score a touchdown on offense for 50 minutes, Bijan Robinson by himself had 3 touchdowns in the first 3 quarters of the game. It doesn't make sense that the Texas Longhorns would lose this game. At the midway point of the second quarter, it was a game that really felt like Texas was about to, I said early in the week, beat the brakes off of Oklahoma State. You could see why you would think that would be the case. And there was a moment in this game, a lot of this game in the first half, where it felt like Texas was going to boat race the Cowboys. They make the big mistake with the Casey Thompson pick six, and there's a big conversation, I think, to have. There's a lot of big conversations to have today. And if you're just joining the postgame show, Anwar Richardson will join us from DKR as soon as he's available. He is in the middle of the Steve Sarkisian postgame press conference, which I'm guessing will be an absolute doozy. In fact, I'm looking at a tweet from Anwar right now where it says Texas football coach Steve Sarkisian said this was the second straight game when they played well, and then something happens in the game. Sarkisian proceeded to list the things that went wrong. Well, yeah. That's the thing. And honestly, it's one of the big conversations we have to have about Steve Sarkisian today as the head coach at Texas, the pressure that comes with this job, and what it means when you're also the offensive coordinator and in charge of the offense. Steve Sarkisian says it's the second straight game when they've played well. And it's true. They've come out like gangbusters the last 2 weeks of the season. They took in both of the last 2 weeks, they have won the opening kickoff. They've won the opening coin toss and asked for the ball. They've got the ball, and they've gone right down the field and scored a touchdown. 7-0. All gas. No breaks. And then they kind of keep it cooking. Sark's got a game plan. He's mixing in creativity and things you want to see from the offense. And then the other team makes adjustments, and the other team makes plays. And where this Texas football team is really struggling right now is when they get punched in the mouth, they do not respond well. Look, you're 2 straight weeks, you're dominating in the first half. And then it's the sign of a weak chin when something goes wrong and you're just discombobulated forevermore. And this was a Texas offense that, by the way, it's so strange. We've lost 10 subscribers on the Orangebloods YouTube channel since we've gone live. So it's like we've gone live and people are looking at the little "we're live" thing and they're like, screw this team. I don't want to watch the Longhorns on YouTube anymore. Fair enough. I completely understand the hate unsubscribe after a game like this. No, but seriously, the Longhorns as an entity, both sides of the ball, like I'll leave special teams out to some degree. You can't really, knock them around upside the head and say that they played a major role in this loss. They were perfectly fine. Especially, I don't know that Texas won special teams today, but it didn't play a huge role in the outcome of this game. What played a huge role in the outcome of this game was that when Oklahoma State adjusted, when Oklahoma State started to make a few plays, Texas, from a player's standpoint, they're just not responding. And I've got to ask some questions about the strength and conditioning program at this point, because this is the second game in a row where they're just not good in the second half. Texas took the opening kick or took the kickoff in the second half. They forced, a punt from Oklahoma State. They get the ball back. They score the touchdown. They're back up to a double-digit lead. It's 24-13. And you're thinking, okay, here we go. The universe has been restored. And from that moment, they didn't score another point in the game. And the offense didn't convert a first down the rest of the game. At one point, going into the fateful final drive that ended with an interception, they'd had 4 straight 3-and-outs. Casey Thompson, we'll get to Casey in a second because I've seen some comments on Casey, and there's a quarterback conversation to be had now. There really is. But before we get to the players and before we get to the culture of the program, for me, is the thing that stands out. Alex Rivera, this is an interesting one. It's like, you see me pull this up here. It says the defense is essentially wearing out. You can't. It's funny. It's so small on my screen. Maybe I need to. I've got my glasses on it. It doesn't matter. Can I make that bigger? How do I do that? Here, maybe if I do this. Oh, okay. Well, the defense gets tired and worn out because the offense can't move the football. Feel bad for Bijan. Yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot. Look, the defense got tired, but the defense also just played poorly. And they play even more poorly when they're tired. So from a culture standpoint, the players, not good enough across the board. I mean, they're not closing the deal. Now, you got to look at the coaching staff right now, and you got to look at what's happening with Steve Sarkisian on the offensive side of the ball. To me, you have to point the finger at Steve Sarkisian and say, what's happening to your team in the second half? And what's happening to you? Why in the first quarter do you get these cute, cool-looking plays, sexy plays? That little misdirections, like toss pass to Keelan Robinson, like that was dope. None of that in the second half for the second straight week. And it's fair to ask if like Steve Sarkisian right now, you look over the course of 7 games, and now you would probably say that Texas is a bad second-half football team on the offensive side of the ball. Horrible against Arkansas in the second half. And worse, and I'm only going in chronological order here. Like, don't think that I'm bringing up the Arkansas game. Believe me, we got a lot with Oklahoma State that we can deal with. But the second half of that game against Arkansas is a disaster, and a lot of it centers around Sarkisian not going to Casey Thompson earlier in that game when Hudson Card was just having one of them nights that Mama always warned about. And quite frankly, Casey Thompson had that kind of game today. It is Steve Sarkisian has to do a better job. His offensive staff has to do a better job. Now, we can talk about Pete Kwiatkowski in a little bit and what's happening on that side of the ball, but today was a lot more about the offense than last week was. All week long, I was one of these guys that was like, no, man, I don't know how much blame you can put on an offense, even as poorly as they played in the second half, when you score 48 points. But today, this loss is the offense's fault. It is. The defense did not allow an offensive touchdown for the first 50 minutes of this game. They forced field goals. They turned Oklahoma State over. They had Spencer Sanders looking like he needed to go to the bench. And the reality of the situation is that the offense's inability to function at an average rate. I mean, again, after the touchdown to open up the third quarter, the Longhorns, I don't think, ever had a first down again in the rest of the game. They went 4 straight 3-and-outs, and then the Casey Thompson interception ends the game. That's a Steve Sarkisian problem. And I'm not throwing Steve Sarkisian under the bus. He's the offensive coordinator. And if this had happened under Tom Herman, we would point the finger at Tom Herman, and we would point the finger at whoever, if this was a situation where, I think I've even tried to just block the names of old offensive coordinators out of my head. But pick one. This game ends, and anybody else that's if Tim Beck is the offensive coordinator and today happens, there's a lot of people who are like, Tim Beck's neck is on the line. And Steve Sarkisian, he's the guy. There's nobody else to point the finger to and say the buck stops with him. Well, excuse me. He's the guy that you say the buck stops with. There's nobody else that you can point the finger and scapegoat on the offensive side of the ball. And to not be able to adjust once over the course of the entire second half after Oklahoma State adjusted themselves is very problematic. And look, I'll take some questions here in a little bit. We'll bring in a ton of comments. We're waiting on Anwar Richardson to join us from DKR. We'll be doing the post-game show probably for the next hour plus. The Texas' season changed today. If you're Texas and you win this game today, you got 5 games to go. You're in the driver's seat. And I think you're on schedule to end up in the Big 12 championship game. A loss today, and obviously that's what occurred. A loss today means you've got 2 losses in Big 12 play. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are both undefeated. Now, if we all want to live in a world of reality where Oklahoma doesn't lose 3 of its last 6 games, you're looking at Oklahoma State and you're saying, we have to run the table in these last 5 games, which for a 4-3 football team that can't block, can't execute, can't defend anybody in the second half, it does feel like a big task at this point to say out loud, well, now if they run the table, they're not running the table. 4-3 football teams that lose like they did today are unlikely to run the table. Like that's not breaking news. We don't need to send out like a tweet or any kind of alert for that. But in order for Texas to get to the Big 12 championship game, they will need Oklahoma State almost certainly to lose 3 games, unless somehow there's 3 teams with 2 losses, and I really don't know that the Big 12 is going to be the kind of team where 3 teams finish with less than 3 losses. Texas needs Oklahoma State to be one of those teams that loses more than 3 games, or they're done. Or this season and the objectives for which this season was defined, like the way we've shaped this entire year, is that Texas getting to the Big 12 championship game is what needs to happen. That's the bar in any season. And that when you watch Texas through the first 6 games of this season, at their best, they feel like a team that should be in the Big 12 championship game. However, they've lost the 3 toughest games, the 3 opponents, the 3 best opponents on their schedule so far. They've lost all 3. And in all 3, flat out, outright, dominated, overmatched, whipped in the second half. So the rest of this season, like I hate to tell everybody that's watching this postgame show right now while we wait for Anwar Richardson to join us, probably in just a matter of minutes. I can't imagine that Steve Sarkisian, if he's not finished, will take much longer. Steve Sarkisian asked about Casey Thompson today in the postgame press conference. We haven't said Casey Thompson's name really yet much in this postgame show. Now we will. I feel like we've talked about culture. We've talked about, and look, we'll get to the offensive line. We're going to hang out. This is going to marinate. We will be in this for a while. However, this will be the Casey Thompson portion of this, where we point out in Casey Thompson's last 12 quarters of football, he's been bad. 10 of the last 12 quarters. TCU, Oklahoma, and today against Oklahoma State. If you take the first half against Oklahoma away, and look, admittedly, it's the greatest half of football that any quarterback at the University of Texas has ever had against Oklahoma. Ever. It was that good. Last week, Casey Thompson's first half against Oklahoma is the best half of football that any quarterback in Burnt Orange has ever had in over 100 years of football. And they played that game like a bazillion times. Nobody's ever been better. Take those 2 quarters away, and in his last 10 quarters, around those other 2 quarters, he's just not been good. He was not good against TCU, and we chalked it up to first road game, Gary Patterson, TCU, circumstances, drop passes. And the bottom line is he wasn't good in that game. Again, last week, a tale of 2 halves. First half, great. Second half, putrid. Today, he was just bad. Today was the worst. Today's probably the worst game of Casey Thompson's life. Because I doubt he ever had a game before college where he was this poor. 15 of 27 for $179, 2 interceptions, both of them just critical. And look, there's no getting around the ball that he threw in the second quarter that was pick 6. An absolute game changer. Texas was dominating that game. Casey Thompson didn't see the linebacker, which when he played against TCU and didn't see, I guess it wasn't the linebacker, I guess technically it was a defensive back, but it was a defender hanging out kind of, he's got like a blind window. It's not his, it's just weird. He does not see, we said this in the TCU game that with Hudson Card, he saw ghosts. 11 dudes on the field, and Hudson thought he saw 15. Casey Thompson doesn't see enough ghosts. And a couple Saturdays ago in Fort Worth, they lose that game if TCU defenders make the plays that Oklahoma State defenders made today. Kind of the same thing. He's looking right, and there is something from center left in his visual that he does not see. He didn't see it today. It was a massive play. But it wouldn't have mattered if Casey Thompson had played a good game around that. It was not good today. And you wonder how much of this was about Jordan Whittington. Obviously, a lot of this has to do with an offensive line that he can't trust. I think that was the big thing in the fourth quarter today. And if I'm Steve Sarkisian and someone asked me today, well, why didn't you put Hudson Card in? I probably would have said, well, you saw how Hudson looked when we couldn't block Arkansas. I don't know if putting him in against Oklahoma State when we couldn't block, I don't know that, that's the answer for me if I'm Steve Sarkisian, at least internally. However, I think there's a conversation in the bye week to have about Casey Thompson and Hudson Card and the future of this Texas offense and who's going to be the guy. Because Casey Thompson showed today why he didn't win the starting job coming out of camp. I mean, turnovers, inconsistency, too many stretches of football where he just wasn't really effective, and more so than Hudson Card, who, for all we want to say about how bad that Arkansas game was, Hudson Card didn't turn the ball over when he was horrible. Casey Thompson was horrible today because he turned the ball over. And there's a big part of the storyline. It is a weirdly odd thing that the two guys have kind of going on at the same time. I can't wait to have the Casey Thompson-Hudson Card conversation with Anwar Richardson, I'm guessing, in just a couple of minutes. Maybe I just went too early today. I don't know. But as soon as he is ready to go, we'll have him on. I am back to not knowing what the answer is. I don't feel like today was the day to bring Hudson Card back in, although Hudson Card lost his red shirt. If that was on the table at all, it's gone now. So Hudson Card has now officially played in 5 games this season. During the bye week, I don't know how you treat that if you're Steve Sarkisian. However, and I think, look, for me, Casey Thompson is still the starter. I think it's kind of a panic move if you're Sarkisian, if you bench Casey, or if you flip the two. I am team Casey Thompson needs to start in Waco. However, I am also, if we get to a point again where Casey Thompson is playing like he has in 10 of the last 12 quarters, if we're into the third quarter in Waco and it's a tight ball game and Casey Thompson is playing as uneven as he has going back to the TCU game, I have to think about making a change. Casey Thompson will almost certainly go into next week as the Big 12's leader in passing efficiency, but that only tells half the story. And one of the things that we've talked about since Casey Thompson took over is how will he respond when teams get a little bit of a scouting report on him. Today they took away Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy, 5 catches for 28 yards. With Xavier Worthy nullified and Jordan Whittington out of the lineup, the only play that the Longhorns, Texas had 3 plays in the passing game today. These were the 3 plays. They hit Marcus Washington down the seam on a gorgeous, was it like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7? Casey Thompson's best ball of the entire day. They're in 5 wides, and he hits that ball down the seam to Marcus Washington for 58 yards. Probably should have been a touchdown. That was huge. The other 2 plays in the passing game of note was the little misdirections, like end-around toss play to Keelan Robinson, which, boy, I'd have loved to have seen either that play again or something off of that play. Like maybe the misdirection is the direction, but they have their eyes on Keelan Robinson, and suddenly Bijan. Those 2 guys on the field together, confusing teams, it was a good thing. We didn't see that again. And then you had the Bijan Robinson play in their bunch formation for the touchdown in the second quarter. That was it. Those were the 3 plays in the passing game today. Beyond that, Xavier Worthy, 5 for 28. Joshua Moore, 3 for 23. Take away the Marcus Washington deep ball that we mentioned, 1 for 2 yards. And Roschon Johnson, 1 for 5 yards. You cannot win in the Big 12 with a passing game like that. And I think one of the questions that everybody's going to be asking, I don't know that I definitively have the answer. To me, it's a combination of both. You've got an issue with your quarterback. I mean, Casey Thompson didn't play well today. But you also, B, have a problem with your offensive line. If anybody was wondering what the addition of Tope Amade would mean to the offensive line in the absence of Denzel Okafor, which that injury you know what? Apologies to Denzel Okafor, because whatever it is that we thought about Denzel Okafor and his play at left guard early in this season, his injury forced the disaster that was Andre Carrick at right tackle last week. And I see Anwar Richardson, he's moments away from joining us in the postgame show, brought to you by the Loewy Law Firm. Thanks to all of you that are here, 585 of you in the room right now. We will be going to more comments. We will be taking some questions. As soon as Anwar joins the show, I'll stop talking for a second. But again, Oklahoma State 32, Texas 24, in a game that changes everything about the Texas season, and in a game where you wonder what it means for Arch Manning and his recruitment. Probably not a huge impact, but Anwar and I have been talking about all season long that if Arch Manning is going to pick Texas, Texas can't feel risky. That Texas has to do enough this season. We're not even talking about winning the Big 12. We're just talking about being playing the Big 12 championship game. Be relevant enough that when it's time to make a decision, and it's Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, well, you know, those are the main 3 outside of Texas, probably. If it's those 3, and then the 4th team is Texas, it can't feel like you're going to a B program at the expense of going to an A program. It's got to feel like you're going to an A program that just needs you to push it over the finish line. And yeah, that's not what this Texas football team is right now. And to me, this will eventually, in the moment, I don't think Arch Manning is going to feel like, oh, this damages his thoughts about going to Texas. But I think in 2 months it might. I think in 2 months, if Texas ends up being an 8-4 team, and he's like, ooh, they do need to get that offensive line fixed, and they do need to step it up a notch, at more than just me. Anwar, I see you. I'm going to try to let Michael know that you're ready to go. And there you are. Anwar Richardson. All I needed to say was his name. Michael, Anwar's waiting. And then, bam, there you were. Anwar Richardson joining us here on the Orangebloods post-game show. Oklahoma State 32, Texas 24. Sponsored by the Loewy Law Firm. Shout out to Adam Loewy, always a tremendous supporter of everything that we do at Orangebloods. And if you need somebody, if you get your ass hurt in the Austin area and you need to sue somebody because they need to give you money, I mean, Adam Loewy is the guy in the Loewy Law Firm is what you want. Anwar, I'm going to shut up for a second. I'm just going to put the ball on a tee for you and let you rip. When we look at this game, and I've been discussing coaching, offense, culture, quarterback, defense in the set. There's a lot to talk about, and we'll talk about it all. For you, in your brain, after this game, you start with what?
I'm borderlining trying to figure out if I just go all the way in or if I just kind of keep it a little PC at this moment.
What do you think I picked, real quick? I'm curious because I think I know where you're going.
I think you probably went all the way in.
Okay, well, forgive me. Continue.
I think you probably went all the way in. This is crap, Ketch. This is crap on every single level. And there's so many things about it. I'll start with the offense. We'll work our way down, okay? Let's talk offense, defense, coaching, Arch. You said you've been talking for a minute, so go ahead and take a break for a second. I'll go ahead and
go to the bathroom.
You can go on a bathroom break. There are that offense just did not look like a productive offense on every single phase. Whether we could start from the guys up front, which we have talked about all off season, how that offensive line was going to be something that could be potentially scary. And we talked about the need for this coaching staff to probably address it in the transfer portal. They chose not to. And now we see the byproduct of that bad decision. It was a bad decision to not figure out ways on how to improve this offensive line. It just is coming back to bite them in the ass. And I am a little bit shocked, to be quite honest with you, Ketch, that this staff went and reviewed all the film of last season and thought to themselves, we're good. I'm a little flabbergasted, to be honest with you. You and I were kind of questioning that all off season long, and here it is. It once again has reared its ugly head, and we knew, here we are. From a quarterback perspective, as much as I am a Casey Thompson guy, Casey is my guy. I will not shy away from that. He did not have a good. I don't think that doesn't mean he's not a good quarterback, but he did not have a good game. Clearly, he had his wrists wrapped up, but at the end of the day, could he have played better? Absolutely. I'm looking at the stats in front of me. We're talking 15 of 27, $179, 1 TD. But here's the thing: that's the kind of the killer is the turnovers. And the turnovers, we haven't seen Casey throw turnovers before like this. I think he didn't have any. I think in the last 2 games, Catch, if I'm correct. And then he throws the pick 6, which Alex Loeb says that's the first pick 6 that the Texas has thrown since 2017. And then he threw the other interception late in the 4th quarter where you just can't do that. You can't have those kind of turnovers that end up being costly. The first interception Casey threw, and again, we'll have to go back. We'll look at the film. But the first interception that he threw, Catch, no matter how it happened, at that point, Texas had a chance to go up. What was going to be 24-3 at that moment, Catch, if I'm correct. And then and then the interception occurs, and then there's a pick 6, and then all of a sudden he takes it to a ball game. They had a chance to at least put a shoe on Oklahoma State's throat before the press down.
If that ball goes incomplete, they kick the field goal. It's 20-3. and they're up 3 scores, and it was a game changer, to say the least.
To say the least. So, as much as, Casey's my guy, I'm not afraid to say he could have played better. Doesn't mean I don't think he won't. I think he will. I think he's got some good football ahead of him, but this was not a good game for him. From a defensive standpoint, this is not second game. This is a third straight loss where it comes to the second half. These guys start getting pushed around. These guys start missing tackles. These offenses are specifically going to the left side. I don't even know if they know if the right side of the field exists, but they are specifically attacking one side of the field because they know that's where the win is. They know that's where the W is going to be. And the fact that, Sark starts talking about the team and their psyche, and it's almost like that here we go again kind of mentality of, when things start going bad, guys start gripping, they're hoping for them, all these other type of things. And that's not good, Catch. Because what you're saying and what he's saying is, as we are, 6 games into the season, or we're 7 games into the season. I don't know. So it was all a damn blur at this moment. You've got a team that where they might be good at certain spots prior to the season. They're realizing that all that stuff, Catch, about practice, all that stuff about scrimmages, it all sounded great, right? Defensive line is going to be the strength of this team. That's not true. The offensive line, we don't need anybody there. We're good. Well, that wasn't true. To a certain degree, they said that Hudson Card was going to be the number 1 starter and then pulled him after 2 games. Like, there was a lot of things that they thought in the offseason that end up not being true when the bullets start flying. And what we see right now is some miscalculation. We see some miscalculation of what they thought they were talented and stacked, and realizing the old Mike Tyson plan of everyone's got a perfect plan until they get hit. And they had a perfect freaking plan, Catch. They had a perfect plan of what they thought was going to be successful. And when this team gets punched in the mouth, they're not responding. They're not responding. I'm going to go to continue on your break because I'm annoyed. Okay. I'm annoyed, Catch, because I got to make reservations for freaking to go to the Texas Bowl in Houston. Right. I'm annoyed that I'm probably going to have to go to the Gala December and look for after Christmas specials once again. But by a program that, Catch, all jokes aside, this is a team that right now they're going to go into a bye and they're going to come out with Baylor, probably going to be another 11 o'clock game. They're going to go on the road, and we'll see what the injury thing looks like. But this team is probably not playing in the Big 12 championship unless a lot of crazy things happen above them. The season now just becomes about trying to get to a bowl game, finishing out recruiting, looking forward to what may lie ahead. But the things that we thought this season was supposed to be about are no longer on the freaking table. No longer. Where everyone's like, I'm living, I'm tired, and all this type of stuff. I am tired of hearing the same excuses from one coach after another. And maybe Sarkisian isn't offering excuses, so maybe that's kind of not fair to say that he's offering an excuse in year one. He's offering explanations and you figure it out. But it's the same things as far as trying to learn what these players are all about, going away from key players. Like there was times that we didn't see Bijan in the second half. And you're saying, okay, he's still here on this team, right? Keelan Robinson, gets a 27-yard reception by Keelan. I have it in front of me, 25 yards. Yeah. 25 yards, and that was pretty much it for Keelan for the rest of the game. We saw a point, Catch, where in the second half that Gundy was throwing everything. I mean, he was throwing all his little trick plays. Like he didn't give a damn about it. Gundy was so intent on this damn game, Catch, that he arrived on Thursday. I mean, he didn't get here on Friday because he said, hey, we've got an 11 o'clock kickoff. I'm bringing my team up here on Thursday just to have that. You rarely see that, Catch, for a morning game. That shows coach who said, this means everything. This is how important it's going to be. So I know what the narrative is going to be going forward, Catch. And I know what people are going to say. Everyone's going to say, when they played Arkansas, Arkansas was ranked. We played Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was ranked. They played Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State was ranked. Okay, well, cool. Then I guess we'll just say, what, Texas can't beat ranked teams? It just give them the easy guys, and great. Then that's your 6-7 wins a year. But that's not their standard, and that's not what they should be gunning for. So right now, the best thing that Sarkisian can do, the best thing Sarkisian can do is figure out he's got to make sure that a season that doesn't meet expectations doesn't become an absolute failure. Like that becomes his next task. He's got to make sure that, look, this team's probably not going to compete for a Big 12 title. Okay. And we kissed CFP goodbye a while ago. We've kissed Big 12 title probably away after this game. Now at this point, find a way to salvage it. Find a way to salvage it and get through it. But, at this point, Catch, we're back to, I said this is probably an 8-win team, and we're closer to that mark than we are anything else. But it's getting old. It's getting old. This shit's getting old. There's a part of me that, wondered, like, what are they going to do on offense to get this thing up, because defense didn't play well. I'll give them, I will give the defense didn't play well, but this offense didn't play well. And again, this offensive line, it's just not that good. It's just not good. Just not good. I thought the defense played a little bit better. Today. I saw them in spots. I saw the defensive line in spots. I saw Alfred Collins flash catch. I thought that overall they played a little bit of better game. But I mean, we're a team that had how many straight 3-and-outs? Was it 5, Catch?
It depends. What do we call it? Because it was 4, and then it was the last drive, 4. And then Casey threw the interception. So was that it was 3? It was 4 3-and-outs and then the turnover.
It was 4 3-and-outs. There was another possession when it was a turnover on downs with 4:37 left.
Oh, that's right.
And then they got the ball back after Oklahoma State scored, right. And then they threw the interception. But overall, Catch, there were 7 3-and-outs. I mean, that's unacceptable. Like I hope everyone appreciates. Like, I'm not going to, just because I was all chips in on someone, just lie and tell you that I think the shit's good just because I want to stand by original prediction. It's not good. It's not good. And this is 2 straight losses for this team. And it's like I said, I'm gonna let you jump back in, but as Kat says, and he's repeating me, shit's getting old. Shit's old. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of hearing from every coach. And like I said, I know what this means, Catch. I know what's coming. I know the narratives that are coming. I know it's going to be really close to getting these seniors to a bowl game. Oh, we got to get the seniors to a bowl game.
Hey, Anwar.
I want Xavier Worthy. I want someone to pull Xavier Worthy aside. Hey, X, man, look, I know you've been playing hard, man. I know you've been doing your damn thing, but listen, over the next few weeks, we got to get these seniors to a bowl. You with me? Oh, shit, man. You know what? Let me find that playbook that I had in the trash can. That's where we're freaking headed. That we're headed to seniors in a bowl game. We're headed we've got to bring in Sark's guys because Sark's needs some time to bring in his guys. I know what the narratives are. So you know what I'm going to do, Catch? I'm going to let you jump back in. I'm going to cut and paste stories that I've written since I got here in 2014, and I'm going to change the names around, and I'm going to take the next 6 months off, and I'm just going to cut and paste, and no one will know the damn difference. That's where I'm at.
So much to respond to. I won't even try. I will say, I think we're going to talk a lot. Eventually, we're going to start peeling back some layers on this.
I did snap, Ben. I'm over it. You want to close my laptop?
Anwar, the thing that's got me laughing the most is the mentions, the chat section.
Nick said, hold on, Nick says, when is the player-only meeting? That's coming next to Nick is so true, Nick. You are so Zamora. I'm sorry, Ketch, I interrupted you. That's coming next too. I'm writing that down, Nick Zamora. I'm giving you credit. That's really good.
At 3:33 p.m. on Saturday, Nick hit us with the when are they going to have the – and you know it's coming.
Yes.
It's really a matter now of like setting the over and under on when the players-only meeting takes place.
I'm tweeting that out.
I think it's tomorrow. I think they're having a players-only meeting tomorrow because that's what they do. Anwar, the chat today is bonkers. This is, for me, and you were making me laugh, but reading the chat section at the same time as your commentary, easily the highlight of today. People are just there's some bonkers stuff happening in the chat section. And look, I know Michael Rockman has been putting our producer has been putting a lot of this stuff up. I can't even keep up. It is it's interesting. Real quick, one point I wanted to make inside of all of that, and then we can kind of go back. I want to go back to Gundy for a second. Here's the most interesting thing for me about the way Mike Gundy coached today. They get the ball in the first half down to the 4-yard line, and they kick the field goal. They take the points. They go very conservative. They go later on in the second quarter. They get the ball in the red zone, and I can't remember where they kicked that ball in. They're inside the 10-yard line again, and they take the 3 points. Very conservative, very un-2021-like, right? I mean, the analytics say you get that close to the end zone, you need to be going for it. I think there was a point in the first half early on when they had a 4th and 1, like 6 inches out, punted. Even in the second half, they're taking the points, they're taking the field goals, they're making it 24-16, and they're just hanging in. They get to the fourth quarter, and Gundy let it all hang out. And it was almost what Gundy's actions told me is they felt like second half, Texas will roll over. If we can keep
Gundy's skewing in deep waters.
If we can just keep this game close, hang around, we're going to run the ball in the second half. They're going to let us do what we want to offensively. We can shut them down because that offensive line cannot block. He coached this game like a guy that knew I really don't need to put my foot on the accelerator until the fourth quarter. And that's what he did. They outscored Texas 16-0 in the fourth quarter. 1 week after Texas was outscored 25-7 in the fourth quarter, which means in the last 2 games, Texas has been outscored 41-7 in the fourth quarter. And I thought Gundy had it wrong. I thought his lack of aggression was going to result in that team losing by double digits. That you got to be a little bit more aggressive, and you got to play in football in 2021 with as many points are scored. Field goals are wins for the defense, and I kept thinking, man, Texas going to score points, and in the end, Gundy he kind of won this with some old school football today. He coached this like a quintessential football coach would coach it from a decade ago, 2 decades ago. But that kind of nuts and bolts approach to managing a football game ended up working wonders when you're playing against a team that's got a weak chin.
I mean, then why catch when we were talking, I guess, on Thursday, when we said, we got a great deal of respect for Mike Gundy. It's a game like this. It's exactly like this. This is what he does against Texas. I don't, against other programs, I can't speak on that. I know he struggles against Oklahoma, but when it comes to
next week, probably. But today they were good.
This is what he does. DKR is his house. Okay, and Gundy. This is what makes him a freak. Good ass coach. Take him to deep waters, then drown him. Right? I mean, that's essentially what he was. His we're going to take Texas into deep water, and then we know they're not going to be able to hang. And that's what they did catch. When you look at the drives in the fourth quarter, they scored on three. They had a touchdown, a field goal, and a touchdown in the fourth quarter. So to your point, he knew, and he just knew kick, field goal, stay around, kick, field goal, stay around. That's okay. They won't get too far. And at the end of the day, they did it. They didn't get too far. It's a weird thing. It's like, Texas comes out and they score on every first drive. It seems like, the way that Sarkisian scripts his opening drive, it's brilliant, to be quite honest with you. I'd have to go check, probably with the exception of Arkansas, scored on every opening drive this season. And then something happens in the second half with this team. And this team starts getting gas. This team starts getting punched in the chest. If this team does not respond, and you have, it goes twofold. Because I know people are going to try to blame the players, but there's enough blame to go around. You got to blame the players for not being able to respond. You got to blame the coaches for not having them ready to respond. You got to blame them as well. They've got to be the ones who, I know the players got to execute. Coach got to be able to get through to those guys on the sidelines. They get paid a whole lot of money. Moro Jomo was asked some questions on Monday's press, his gathering. And he was asked about things that they can do better. And he goes, these guys get paid millions and millions of dollars to come up with those answers. And he was asked at another time about things they can do. Again, they get paid millions and millions of dollars to come up with those answers. And at the end of the day, he's right. He's right. It is up to the staff. And you know what? And let's just keep it a buck. At one time, we always say, players win games, lose them, right? And that's always supposed to be the model. So you know what? These coaches got to take some blame. Can I have another slight thing in my irritation Saturday? Who gets so in our irritation Saturday? This is a pet peeve of mine. This is a small pet peeve. I'm going to get back on topic. Speaking of millions of dollars, Sarkisian speaks after the game. He never lets his assistants speak. He doesn't have his coordinators available. And I called out Charlie Strong for this, and I want to call out Sarkisian for this as well. Look, man, as Vance Bedford used to go to the bus. And I'm like, look, at the end of the day, don't as players are getting interviewed right now, how about this? How about you who makes $1 million a year? How about you come out and answer some questions and don't put these 20, 21-year-old young men out here and have them answer questions for you. Like if you are adult enough to make that kind of money, then you should be adult enough to stand there and answer the questions, and don't let these young men take the damn bullets for you while you're on the bus, while you're in the office, while you're somewhere else. And I understand Sarkisian wants to be the voice, and I get all of that kind of little stuff. But at the end of the day, how about you let those grown ass men that you hired look? If you feel like if you put Pete Kwiatkowski out here that he's going to say something that's going to be on the line, then guess what? You hired the wrong person. Okay, so you should be able to that person should have the company line with you and be able to say anything. But that's a small little bitch. That's what it is. Catch. This is small.
Can I co-sign that before you go? I'm with you on that. Like when you lay it out, especially when you lay it out exactly like that. Just for the record, if the kids are gonna come out and talk, then the dude's getting paid half the national debt can come out and give us their thoughts.
Just hey, why does any young man on this team have to answer the tough questions from reporters today, while the guys who are responsible, the play callers, they're sitting in some damn office somewhere. That's bullshit to me. I called out Vance Bedford that, and Vance Bedford and I had a big toe-to-toe. And by the way, after Vance Bedford and I went toe-to-toe on that, about a week or so later, he started talking. I'm just going to throw that out there. So anyway, man, Catch. Yeah, I don't know what Sarkisian. Go ahead. You have a question.
If you want to stick with Sarkisian, we can absolutely talk about that, because there's an amazing conversation to be had right now about how good it looks when he has the plan, right? You mentioned earlier, like, they're scoring on the first drives of games. They're not just scoring on first drives of games. They're winning coin tosses, and they're electing to take the ball first because they want the ball so goddamn bad that they can't wait. We want it now. And they believe in the plan, right? And they're scoring touchdowns. And Sarkisian has talked about the script and how he is able to plan, and they stick to a plan. And it looks beautiful at times in the first half. When teams adjust to the plan, and we've seen this now in more games than not this season. Arkansas, Oklahoma State, TCU, we have seen that when teams adjust, his offense has had a really hard time adjusting at all. I'm not talking about being slow to adjust. I'm talking about they haven't been able to get out of their own way in the last two games in the second half. That's all on Sarkisian. That's his side of the ball. Before you came on, I mentioned if Tim Beck were the offensive coordinator at Texas right now, there'd be 100 threads that would be saying Tim Beck has to be fired. Now, you don't do that with Sarkisian. You know, he's not on the hot seat. However, that's his baby. And when it looks like he himself is struggling, it's an impossible thing to ignore. When the offense struggled under Herman, especially early on, Herman was protected from it to a degree, right? You could always point to he's not calling plays. He doesn't have his major Applewhite. Tim Beck's not good enough. It's a new thing when the head coach is directly responsible for that thing, and that thing is so woefully bad like it was today. It makes the conversation about Sarkisian hard to think about from a big picture standpoint when we're specifically talking about this thing, which was 7 3-and-outs, 4 in a row in the second half, and essentially for the final 25 minutes of that game, kind of being worthless on the offensive side of the ball.
It definitely, Catch. And you know, a lot of that is what's happened, like you said, when teams are making adjustments in the second half. He's not. You know, again, the script looks great. You know, the creativity looks great to start off with, and then teams start doing different things, and it's just like, now what? What do you do? What's going on? And you know, this is the second straight week that, you know, this offense has struggled. You know, especially particularly in the second half, and especially when another team starts doing well. And yeah, you know, the thing is, to your point, Catch, there's always this degree of separation between the coordinator and the head coach, right? And so it's easy to say it's on Tim Beck, or it's on Sean Watson, or it's on Yursich, right? Because it's not necessarily the head coach who's calling the plays. The hard part in the balancing act is it is Sarkisian calling the plays, but usually the head coach gets a pass in year one. So now if you start going too hard, and then you're starting to go hard. If you go on him as the OC, then you're also going in him as the coach. And I don't think many people are willing to go that route because everyone wants to say, all right, it's year one, he needs some time, so on and so forth. But if we're being just 100 and being open-minded, being a buck about it, yeah, he could, from a play calling perspective, there were some things that, you know, it left some things to be desired. He was even asked about that, and he admitted but he probably could have done a better job as far as play calling is concerned, and probably did a little bit more creativity, a little more trick plays, like a little bit better when it was all said and done. But clearly, I mean, what the hell else to say? They had 1 yard of offense in the fourth quarter. Catch a yard of offense in the fourth quarter. I mean, what the hell? Right? That's unacceptable. And what Sarkisian has to be careful of, Catch, what Sarkisian has to be careful of, especially when in this job that he's in, especially with this fan base that he's with. Look, if you're in Washington, whatever you do is a bonus. Like, and no one's going in there saying, "Hey, we expect Washington to compete for a conference title every single year." It's not really the expectation. If it happens, great, but no one's getting fired because of that. Okay, because if we look at Sark's record while he was at Washington, it's 5-7, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6, 8-4. That was good enough. Because that was good enough for him to get promoted somewhere else. Then the USC thing happens. And again, USC is one of these interesting programs because they want the football team to succeed. It's not life and death if they fail. Here's a little bit different, though. And I say a little bit, it's a lot different. The honeymoon is definitely over. I mean, that's fair to say, right? The honeymoon is over. The sayings are definitely over, right? No one's going to ride with all gas, no brakes anymore. That's a cliche it's officially over.
No one can ever say that again, right? Not for a while.
I mean, not unless they want to get ridiculed.
Yeah, it comes down to that.
If that's what you want to do, then you can definitely do that.
The memes will be hot if you continue all gas, no brakes for now.
You can't say he removed from his vocabulary this past week that they had intent. Their intent was good in practice. Like, he removed that from his vocabulary during Monday's press conference. And here's the thing: like, at the end of the day, Catch, what we'll have to see, what remains to be seen. Like, I know people still have it's still early, a few games into Sark's tenure. There's still plenty of time and plenty of field ahead. But what Sark let's just be real, okay? Sark still has to prove that he could be a successful head coach. And by successful, I mean a championship caliber head coach, because he has it. And this at most, his most wins in a season was 9. Okay, that was it. And I believe I have to check if I think that 9-win season included a bowl game, if I'm correct. So his most in a regular season was 8. And of course, he didn't get a chance to see it out the following year. So he still has some proving to do, that as a head coach, not as an assistant to Nick Saban, but as a head coach and an OC, that he can do the things. Because we hear all this stuff about Ricky. Is a good story about a good question, by the way. You hear about the different spots and how smart he is and all these other type of things. But he's going to learn a lesson in the same thing. I wrote this last week, and I'll say it again. And I said this about Tom Herman was not hired to make Texas fans feel good about losses, and Steve Sarkisian wasn't hired to make Texas fans feel good about losses. At the end of the day, you got to find a way to get it done, to get some creative offensive in here. You got to find a way to get those W's to get to the conference championship game. And all this other stuff is not going to matter. If you go out and maybe beat Baylor, Louis State, all this other type of stuff, it is not going to matter. All this hype, all the matching outfall, all gas, no, all that type of stuff is not going to matter if you don't win. And he's not, and right now he's got 3 losses in year 1.
Anwar, you're spot on, and I'll reiterate for those of you who are just tuning in, it is the Orangebloods postgame show. We're brought to you by the Loewy Law Firm. And Anwar, you mentioned they're 4-3. Look, they're in a position now where they'll almost certainly need one of Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. I feel so embarrassed for even saying this out loud, like talking about what Texas, they're 4-3. They're one game over 500. They've lost their 3 most challenging games of the season, dominated in the fourth quarter of all 4. In a world where they went out.
Oh, wait, I'm going to take this hand sanitizer and start drinking it live.
In a world where they went out, they need a lot of, even if they do everything that is in front of them, they're now in a position where they have to rely on teams they couldn't beat to potentially lose either 3 of their last 6 or 3 of their last 5 games. Yeah, they're playing out the string now. In baseball, this is officially what playing out the string looks like. They've got a bye week. There's a lot for them to talk about. Going into the bye week, let's talk some players for a little bit. We have to talk about Casey Thompson. We have to talk about the quarterback performance. Give me a second to set this up as I lob you the Casey Thompson question.
You want me to go back in on Casey? Okay, we can do it again.
No, because I'm going to say from the very beginning, I believe that Casey Thompson is absolutely your starter against Baylor. So whatever going in on Casey Thompson is, it feels like there are people who are going in on Casey Thompson, and they're not saying that. So whatever this is, it's not going all in on Casey Thompson, especially when you consider he just lost a receiver and he's got an offensive line right now. He was not a confident player in the fourth quarter today, and it was because he could not get set without Jailbreak City. And so, and he is 6 quarters removed from the greatest half of football that any quarterback has ever played against Oklahoma in the history of the Texas football program. That out of the way, he wasn't good today. The passing offense wasn't good today, even more so than Casey specifically. It's hard to point to a lot of things to feel real good about. It happened a couple of weeks ago against TCU, and we kind of chalked it off as Casey's first start on the road. Again, the offensive line kind of miserable at times. Against Oklahoma in the second half, not good enough. We're at a weird place with Casey Thompson where he's not been good in 10 of the last 12 quarters that he's played in. Now, those other 2, historically good, like, again, for the record. But I guess my lobbed question back to you is, during the bye week and just over the course of these next 6 weeks, are we at a point where he's got to start thinking about, do I have the right guy? Is Casey definitely the guy? Should I think about Hudson Card? Or is the offensive line such a big problem, Casey gets a bit of a pass because Hudson wouldn't probably do any better under duress like that, given what we saw against Arkansas? I'm a little confused because today Oklahoma State figured out how to take Xavier Worthy out of the passing game. And without Jordan Whittington there, once Xavier was somewhat nullified, it was a bad unit. And I don't know what it means because Texas plays good defenses coming up. Like Oklahoma State's got a good defense, but so does Baylor, so does Iowa State. They will see defenses on par with what Oklahoma State is. And I'm kind of in a shoulder shrug moment with the quarterbacks. I would stick with Casey, but whereas when you and I have had the quarterback conversation for the last 6 weeks, I've been all in on he's your guy. You've got to support him. You do not take him out of the game. I don't know now. I don't know what the right answer is, other than he's got to play better football one way or the other. Texas has to get better quarterback play than they've been getting recently outside of those 2 quarters against Oklahoma last week.
I mean, I'm still not convinced Card's the answer. And, I think if Card wasn't so shell-shocked in that Arkansas game, maybe, but he was. So now if they go and look at the film, and they feel like Casey had the same reaction as Hudson did. And they feel like that it was, I mean, you had players who were saying that Hudson was visibly shaken. Yeah. I mean, his teammates said, like, they could tell he was rattled.
Well, Casey takes that big shot today, Anwar, and he was never quite – and look, he came out for a play, and I don't completely know what was happening there. Like, I don't know if he just lost his breath or had a heart – whatever it was, you know, like the collateral damage of the hits and the pressure today, he didn't play well. He just – and I'll go
extremely well when they're getting hit.
Casey Thompson lost this game for Texas today.
I won't go that far.
That interception.
That's a little bit
second quarter. Texas is a play away from blowing that game wide open, and it's a blowout without the pick six. And from the pick six moment on, he did not play well the rest of the game at all. And so, you know, like everything that happens during the course of I rarely put it on a guy, but that pick six was such a turning point in the game that if you take it away, I don't think Texas loses this game. And that play happens, and then the totality of 4 quarters of bad football added up. I look at today at the quarterback position kind of the same way I look at the Arkansas game in the quarterback position. It wasn't good. There wasn't anything that you could lean on to say that was our bread and butter, and we can feel good about that. Maybe the Marcus Washington ball out of 5 wides. Interesting, I don't remember them ever going 5 wides again. The one time they did, they got 58 yards out of it. Casey's a quarterback and he's hurt. So I don't know what the hand thing is. So
okay.
Sometimes, again, Anwar, sometimes an excuse is nothing more than the reason why something happens. You've got a little bit of an injury. You've got a coach that's in a little bit of a funk in the second half.
You've got a horrible offensive line that cannot be denied.
It's a lot of things. It
starts there.
What's that?
It starts there.
God, there's so much going on, Anwar. I feel like it starts in 3 different places. I look at Sark. He has to when that offensive line is getting overwhelmed. Look at what Gundy did today. When the jailbreaks were occurring, screen passes, draw plays, weird little, they're running the ball on 3rd and 9 and generally doing things that Texas isn't expecting. Like, even if they fell short of getting the first down, they weren't playing into Texas's hands. Texas on offense, and this isn't a Casey problem for me. This is a Sarkisian problem for me. At no point in the second half did we see them do something to try to change it up, switch it up, go hurry up, do a little something with Keelan and Bijan in the backfield. Do something. Save something for the second half. Do half the stuff that you do in the first half. Save the other stuff in the first half for the second half. When your offense is in the middle of a horrible rut and you have to, because here's the thing, either your players pull you out, right? So when you're in a rut, either your quarterback pulls you out of a rut because he's an absolute badass, and that's what badass quarterbacks do, or your Heisman level running back pulls you out. But if the offensive line can't block and the offense can't depend on those 2 players, then if you're Steve Sarkisian, you have to have a curveball. You have to have a changeup. You cannot be a pitcher that only has a fastball. Because, if this were Major League Baseball and all you have is a fastball, no matter how fast you throw it, by the time you've seen a lineup has seen you 2 or 3 times, let alone 4 or 5 times, it has made all the adjustments it needs, and it's got you. And it just feels like for the last 2 weeks, defenses have adjusted to Texas. and said, we got you now. And at no point in either of the last two games in the second half has one of the best, most renowned play callers in college football done a single thing that you could look at in either game and say, okay, he did something, he changed something, he did something, he altered the behavior that was otherwise getting him in trouble. I don't blame Casey Thompson for that. That is all on Steve Sarkisian, head coach / offensive coordinator. If you're that good, you have to have a secondary thing. Mike Gundy had a secondary thing today. Texas was winning the battle at the line of scrimmage, and Oklahoma State made adjustments. And I will give credit to the Texas defense a little bit today. They deserve to have a win today. Look, it's amazing that they lost this game. Oklahoma State does not score an offensive touchdown for nearly 50 minutes in this game. And all the while, they can't score an offensive touchdown. Bijan Robinson has 3 in the first 3 quarters. So, first 3 quarters of the game, Oklahoma State has 0 offensive touchdowns. Texas has 3 Bijan Robinson touchdowns. How in the hell is the game even a game? And the answer in this case is that Gundy outcoached Steve Sarkisian. That's what happened. Going back to what I talked about, taking the field goals and punting on 4th and 1. And Gundy knew, get this game into the fourth quarter and it's close. We'll take them, like you said, into deep waters and we'll drown them. And Sarkisian has walked into that trap 2 weeks in a row. And if they don't get this thing fixed, this could be a 7-5 season real quick.
Which, by the way, Texas fans may not want to hear it. That's a step backwards.
Oh, of course.
It's a step backwards. You don't fire your head coach to have less productivity and play worse than you did previously. And that would be a clear step backwards for this program. And that's bad moon rising, as far as that is concerned. I mean, there's a lot of what you said. I don't, as far as Case is concerned, I don't put it all on him because I still think there's the line played bad. The receivers had drops. You had penalties on the offensive line just at inopportune times. There were times where you thought the defense was going to get off the field on 3rd down, and then there was a boneheaded penalty, or there was like a horse collar one time by Coburn that extended the drive, and there was a Ray Thornton penalty, I believe, that extended another drive. So I mean, there's a lot to go around, right? There's a lot of things. So from an offensive standpoint, a defensive standpoint, the lack of creativity within the play calling. I mean, we can't say that with all.
But you know what, Anwar, real quick, all of that was true in Fayetteville. Hudson Card lost them that game. And they were awful offensively. They couldn't run the football. They got pushed around defensively. But sometimes you can play poorly enough at quarter. I guess I'll ask it like this. If that pick 6 doesn't happen, do you think Oklahoma State still wins the game?
I don't know. I mean, because, yes, I think Oklahoma State probably wins the game, yeah.
I think
Oklahoma State was going to win this game regardless.
Not only do I not think Oklahoma State wins the game, I think Texas blows them out. Spencer Sanders was awful today.
I don't think that's still only that there was still plenty of time left.
Right, but it was about to be a 20-3 game.
I don't think it would have been a blowout. I mean, you can't catch. They had a 21-point lead against Oklahoma and blew it.
The difference between Oklahoma State and Oklahoma is that Oklahoma State was still wretched on offense for the first. Oklahoma had almost 700 yards of offense. That was not Oklahoma State today. Oklahoma, I was
calling. They only gave up this. They were able to hold it to about 400 yards.
Oklahoma, because they had a big fourth quarter. Oklahoma State doesn't score a touchdown offensively for 50 minutes. 50. The game's only a game. It's only a game because of the pick six.
No, the game's a game because there was a bad offensive line. Like I won't. You can have that narrative. I won't.
That's fine.
That was a costly mistake. But there were so many other things that went wrong. I just cannot put this all on Casey. He didn't do his part to lead them to a victory. But to say that cost them game where there was so much more time left, where there was so many more opportunities, he got killed.
You described that moment yourself as having a foot on their throat.
Yes.
And if that play doesn't happen and they score points,
that's one play.
On the throat, they crushed the throat.
That's one. You still had a defense that wasn't stopping anyone.
The Texas defense stopped them through the first three quarters of this game.
I mean, look, listen. If
Texas defense give up a touchdown,
show me. I mean, it's again. I'm not ready to, and you won't talk me into me saying that I think Casey Thompson blew that game. I just won't. There was too many things that happened for me.
Do you think Hudson Card blew the Arkansas game?
Excuse me?
Did Hudson Card blow the Arkansas game?
I mean, he's one of the contributing factors, absolutely. But clearly, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, the coaching staff made a change. So we'll know if they feel the same way if they look at the tape and they make a change. But at the end of the day, in my opinion doesn't count. The coaching staff felt like they can't win with Hudson Card, and they made the change.
That's fair.
So
I was just trying to get to it. Like, I was just trying to gauge. Like, I feel what you're saying, and you kind of said the same thing with Hudson, that you wouldn't even go so far as to say that Hudson lost the game.
He didn't play well.
Right. The difference is the turnovers. And it's weird because as bad as Card played against Arkansas, and man, it was bad, he didn't turn the ball over. He won that job in the fall in part because he takes care of the ball, but he did in practice, right? Whatever the hell that means. In practice, he took care of the ball better than Casey. And that was always one of the things during August when Luke Brockermeyer was making a bunch of interceptions in camp. And that shit ain't happening now. But in camp, when there were interceptions and stuff, the thought was that the advantage that Hudson had over Casey was partly that. I mean, you and I have done shows. I said earlier, probably back in July, I didn't think the team's record would be any different with one quarterback versus the other. That ultimately this season at the quarterback position is about investing in what you plan to do long term. And I still stick with Casey. I just feel like Casey for the last few weeks has not had a leash at all. I wonder now if going into the Baylor game, if it can be a long leash, but I don't feel like he's gone into games with any leashes since he came out of the Arkansas game and has played as well as he has. But here's another thing that's a bit worrisome about Casey, real quick, and then I'll turn it back over to you, and we can even start to wrap some of this up if you want to.
Yeah. The latter for sure.
I think the most alarming thing for me with Casey isn't even the interceptions. Today they were monstrous, but his turnovers have not been a problem this season. And you've got to let a young quarterback have some turnovers. It's going to happen. So less concerning is, I think, the turnovers than the fact that this is the third straight game that Casey's been at about 55% completing passes. So in the first 4 games, he's at like 80% and 70%. At worst, like mid-60s. But I think mid-60s may have been the worst game that he had from a completion percentage standpoint early on. In the last 3 games, including the Oklahoma game, you're talking about a situation where he's completing less than 56% of his passes. And that is a bit worrisome because that's starting to get into the Sam Ehlinger territory of inconsistent passing the ball. I don't know. This is less about who they play at quarterback and more about what's happening in the offense and at that position specifically. It's got to get better. Has not been good in 10 of the last 12 quarters of football that the Longhorns have played.
Well, all I'll say is this, and we can move it on, is that last week they scored 48 points and he threw 5 touchdowns. So I can't –
any players ever had against Oklahoma.
So, and I believe he set a Red River, record, for touchdown passes, I think by at least a Texas quarterback. So, there's going to be certain things where I've got to say, all right, he's had some highs and now we're figuring out what the lows are. But you know what the common denominator, it's kind of like when you get into when you're dating, right? You ever meet someone who's dating, they date someone, and then they get out of that relationship and they start telling you, yeah, that person had nothing but attitude. I got so tired of them. I had to get rid of them. And about a year or so later, they start dating someone else. And it's the same exact thing. And then a year later, and then at some point you go, what's the common denominator in every equation? It seems to be you. Well, what's been the common denominator, whether it's been Hudson Card or whether it's been Casey Thompson? It has been this offensive line hasn't played well, and we have questioned Steve Sarkisian as a play caller. Those things have been very consistent, and those are the common denominators. And look, Steve Sarkisian, he's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer. You're going to tell me you've got 2 guys that are struggling? You're supposed to be the person that has the answer for that. You're supposed to be the person that understands what it takes to have success on the offensive line. And right now, it ain't happening. And it doesn't look, and it's, at this point, trust me, you are who you are as a team when you are, darn near at the midway point. And so there's some common denominators here. Let's before we close out. All right,
hey,
Cash?
real quick, can I just throw one more person under the bus?
Yeah.
Strength and conditioning.
Ooh, was that Becton, huh?
I mean, it's so weird because every head coach you've covered up until now, the strength and conditioning guy is kind of a rock star, right? Yeah. Like, oh my God, Pat Moore this and Pat Moore that. And then it was Yancey. Nobody talks about Becton as his name never comes up. However, it needs to maybe now because, yes, the Texas defense ran out of gas, but I don't know that it should have. I mean, it wasn't it was a warm day, but this team's been playing in 100 degrees all year long.
72.
That's what I'm saying. It's a perfect day for football. They were not on the field an overwhelming number of snaps today. It's just that this is a team that gets wobbly in the fourth quarter. And it's been bad. This is a team that's played poorly in 4 out of 7 second halves of games this season. And it's weird that nobody – I'm only calling it out today because this team keeps running out of gas. Isn't that what the strength and conditioning program is supposed to be about? Yeah. You go to the fourth quarter, you put the 4 in the air, right? Because this is what you practice for. This is what you bled and vomited and sweated for during the summer so that in the fourth quarter of games, you could impose your will on opposing teams.
That's not what they're putting up. And they're putting this up. They're putting this up.
Where's the white flag?
Hey, can you guys slow down? We tired. And they go just like this.
And it takes everything out of them to use that second hand on more. It's like, can I get a water bottle now, man? Seriously, the fourth quarter is supposed to be about imposing your will, and we're watching a team that certainly in the last 2 weeks has had its will, had another team significantly impose its will to the point where if that game had gone on for another quarter, Anwar, Texas probably loses by 3 touchdowns. Like, they were done. And Oklahoma State was like, let's play 15 more minutes of football. This is fun. Okay, rant over. Sorry.
No. And look, to the point, it goes back to what we originally talked about, to the point where Gundy looked on film and said, just hang around, fellas. It'll happen. Just hang around, and we'll get them in the second half. And sure enough, you see it in boxing all the time, right, Ketch? Guys who are just saying, just hold on to the from that onslaught in the first few rounds and get them into the middle rounds. And once you get them to the middle rounds, you'll wear them down and knock them out by the 8th or the 10th.
That could almost be the parting shot for the show. Texas is a boxer that good fighters know, take them deep, they can't beat us. And so far, the best teams on the Texas schedule have proven that to be exactly true.
Yeah.
You got anything you want to say? Final comment?
The only thing I know you already talked about a little bit about it. I'll do this and we'll just wrap this up in like 2 to 3 minutes. All right.
Go for it.
Arch.
35 minutes.
Okay. This will be very interesting. I did see the Manning family actually on my way to the press conference. And I thought it was, they're walking through the hallway and it's quiet, right? Because after a win, everything's like pumped up and everyone's super excited and all the other type of things. And then they're walking into an environment where they understand everyone's lost and no one's in a good mood. And that's not fun for recruiting. Right. I mean, that you don't want your recruits to kind of be in that like solemn, like quiet, like tough loss. Well, Arch, what'd you think? That's a tough conversation to have. And I know they'll probably go out and do some dinner, try to liven it up just a little bit. But
6th Street will be fun tonight.
Yeah. I mean, if he goes out, well, he's young. I don't know if he'll go out to 6. The other kids probably may go to 6. I don't
think that dude to 6.
I don't know if Dad is Cooper's letting his kid out at 6.
Chris Sims went to 6th Street. That's one of the ways they got Chris Sims.
It all depends on what Ruben Owens wants to do, right?
Or Evan Turner. Not Evan Turner, but Evan Stewart.
Evan Stewart, So I don't know, Ketch. This is one of those games that it probably doesn't help or hurt as much, but if this team loses another one after this, then I think it hurts a little bit. Then I think, going forward, you got the 2023 class that has some decisions to make, and do they want to? Because it's different saying like, all right, you come in and continue our success versus you come in and we need you to be successful. Some kids love that challenge, other kids don't. So we'll find out. Hopefully we'll have some updates, over the weekend as far as how the visit went. But it'll be very curious to see how the Sarkisian handles the loss with these recruits and how he kind of pitches it, because they have a good recruiting class for 2022. But holding on to that and then building on that for 2023, that's going to always, as always a challenge.
It's funny because I told you earlier today I was very close to putting in a future cast for Texas. And today, 3 hours later, I'm greatly concerned for Texas that when the season ends, look, Texas was 25th in the country in one poll, unranked in another, going into this season. After today, I mean, there definitely won't be ranked. I'll be surprised if they're in the receiving votes category of the polls. I mean, who's voting Texas at 4-3 into the top 25 at this point? If they get more than a handful of votes combined, I really will be surprised. It's possible that the polls will come out tomorrow and Texas won't get a single vote in either poll. Now, maybe that's hyperbole, but it won't be by much. I mean, Texas is a non-factor in the polls after today. My concern for Texas with Arch Manning is that no matter how good of a time he has at the bowling alley or wherever they go tonight to hang out, maybe just the dorm rooms, who knows? It'll be milk and cookies and a quiet night of the PlayStation, if that's even what kids do anymore. However, he's going to go home and he's going to continue to watch football this fall, and he's going to have a group of programs that he's interested in, and only one of them is not going to be relevant nationally. Only one of them is not going to be ranked, although Clemson may fall into that category as well. Although I don't think Clemson is the biggest competition, certainly not what you need to be worried about. I think that Texas, we've said it, man. We did a buy or sell a couple of weeks ago where it was like, we think if Texas gets to the Big 12 championship game, Arch goes to Texas. But if Texas doesn't go to the Big 12 championship game, and they're just, I mean, this, like you said, this feels like a step back through 7 games from where Texas was a year ago. Is Texas going to find itself in a bridesmaid position where, as much as Archie loves Sarkisian and maybe this program, he's not going to take a risk? The Manning family do not strike me as people that take risks. They don't have to. He can go anywhere. He can go anywhere and be surrounded by really good players and compete for championships. He can go anywhere, but is anywhere Texas? Does that include Texas? And look, if he walked up to me today, and if Arch walked up to me and said, Ketch, what do you think? Is Texas going to be competing for championships in a couple of years? Are they going to get the offensive linemen that they need? Like, is the recruiting going to be exactly where it needs to be on the defensive side of the ball so that I can feel comfortable that I'm not wasting my time? Because you know what? Bijan's kind of wasting his time right now. I mean, he's a special player on a 4-3 team surrounded by all of the things that Arch would be coming in and be surrounded by. And so Texas has to be more legitimate than they've been, not just this season or the year before. It has to look like they're going somewhere. And after today, as much fun as he might have had, Texas isn't going anywhere in 2021. They're headed for 8-4. 9-3 salvages potentially the Arch Manning recruitment. Because at that point you can get to 10 and you've got a story. I'm embarrassed, though, given how Texas has gotten punched twice in the face in the second half of games 2 weeks in a row and blown leads and collapsed. I'm kind of embarrassed to say 5 in a row with a halfway straight face. This isn't a team that's proven that they can win on the road, play well on the road, take a punch in the second half. This is baby steps at this point for the Texas football program. And as it specifically relates to Arch Manning, I don't know. If it were my kid, I'd need to see a lot more.
I think that's fair. Like I said, my parting shot, my last thing I'll say, Ketch, is there will definitely need to be some real conversations. And if I'm Arch, I want to know, what is this offensive line going to look like, and who are you bringing in the future that by the time I get here, I have a chance to succeed, because as it stands, offensive line recruiting, Ketch, under Herb Hand wasn't good. It was good, and that last year was really, really bad to the point Herb was just offering anybody that would move, and they were still having trouble getting guys to commit. So if I'm Arch, I need to know and find skill guys. I need to know what kind of guys you've got up front that will help me by the time I get here.
Somebody said, this one kind of cracked me up a little bit. Ketch, is UT competing for championships? No, but I know where the hot women are. Dude, let me just tell you something. There are hot women everywhere. It is not. I'm just telling you, like, he can go to Georgia and they can show him where the hot women are. They got to show Arch and his dad and his family, which is like an institution. They're like JP Morgan. And they've got to show them that their plan will have them competing with Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia while he's there. And that is a question that's hard to answer right now, quite frankly. And it gets harder when Texas isn't relevant nationally. Look, guys.
You know what? I'm going to say this for the question I have. I'm going to say for Overreaction Monday. I'll let you close it out.
Go for it.
Herman lost out on Quinn Ewers, and that became one of the things that it was the thing that almost sent Herman over the edge, right? There was a couple of things, eyes at Texas, the Brockmeyers, and I think Quinn Ewers was kind of like the last thing. When you compare Herman, the necessity to get Quinn or keep Quinn, where does the Sark and Manning thing rank as far as like importance, as far as donors, fan base, all those kind of things? And maybe a little bit different because Quinn was committed at one point, but I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on it. And not to say that means, oh my God, like everyone's coming from. I don't necessarily mean like that, but from a perception standpoint.
I think the big thing that it does is it potentially sets back. They are in a situation where they're telling a lot of kids, come play with Arch. So the big pitch to Jonte Cook, the 5-star wide receiver out of DeSoto, is come play with Xavier and come play potentially with Evan Stewart and come play with Arch. Come play with Arch. They're telling Evan Stewart, come play with Arch. Telling all these guys, come to Texas and play with Arch. Where that got Texas with Ewers is they were telling all of the kids in the 2022 class, come to Texas and play with Quinn. And when Quinn bolted, it killed recruiting.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that you would be concerned about is if Arch were to go someplace else, they've spent so much time with the other big-time guys, including Arch in the sales speech, that your speech no longer works. And if you have to change your speech and give a different speech, kids notice that. You can't tell a kid, come here with Arch and we're going to blow it out of the water. And then if Arch goes to Georgia, it leaves what you've been selling completely in the gutter. And it's just in the trash bin. So I think the real risk with if you lose Arch is there's a lot of firepower in that 2023 recruiting class that seems connected somewhat to just every time Ruben Owens mentions Texas, he's mentioning Arch. Every time Jonte Cook mentions Texas, he's mentioning Arch. A lot of these guys are kind of doing the same thing. They've allowed themselves to potentially enter a territory where, it didn't kill Texas when Klubnik went to Clemson, right? And it didn't, this is a unique situation. And I don't know, the potential damage to the 2023 class could be minimal, depending on when Arch makes his decision. That is, maybe an earlier loss is easier to recover from than if he takes it into next summer and then he decides and it's not Texas, and then the whole message for what they're trying to sell, for what the Sarkisian program can look like, changes a little bit. They are planning for Arch Manning to be a Longhorn. That's the way Texas has been operating. I think it's planning for the last 4 or 5 months, and they will moving forward. It's a bit of a dangerous game because, like I said, you'll have recruits who are like, now what? And you know what? There are 0 elite in-state quarterbacks in the 2023 recruiting class. So, we'll see. And look, there's a lot left. Like Arch, I guarantee you Arch and his dad will leave campus this weekend and they will say unbelievable glowing things about Texas. But there's a residual punch to the gut for Texas, I think, that will come out of this season potentially. And you won't really feel it maybe for 6 months. But when you feel it, you'll feel it. And, whereas I thought 4 hours ago Texas was going to get Arch Manning, I have real questions about where this team is headed now the rest of this season. And it's hard to see where they're nationally relevant, being talked about on ESPN again the rest of the year. They're 4-3. So if they beat Baylor in 2 weeks, they're 5-3. Nobody cares. They win Baylor and Iowa State, and they're 6-3. At that point, they're probably back in the top 25 again, but nobody's talking about them. They're not in the Big 12 championship picture. They're winning games that are insignificant and that nobody cares about. And that's if they win, though, right?
Right.
I don't know who I'm picking between Baylor and BYU. Between Baylor and Texas in 2 weeks. I really don't, because that game's on the road, and I think Baylor is the type of team from a makeup standpoint, even more so than Oklahoma State. Baylor's better positioned to do, for me, what Oklahoma State just did than Oklahoma State is, and Oklahoma State just did it to the tune of winning the game at DKR. Not at home, not in Stillwater. They did it with a pop gun offense for 3 quarters, and it didn't matter. And I think Baylor's a little bit better than that. And look, they're playing BYU right now in Waco. It's a 17-14 game in the third quarter. BYU may win that game and blow the doors off of Baylor when it's all said and done. Or Baylor could be 6-1 playing a 4-3 Texas team, potentially threatening to put Texas into a 4-4 position.
Jesus.
I don't want to do the thing where every week is a crossroads game and you know what I mean? We've seen those before. But if Baylor loses to BYU in 2 weeks, Baylor Texas is a nothing game. But if Baylor wins this game and they're 6-1 and they're ranked and they've got 2 weeks to get hyped up for Texas, that's a scary game for Texas. And the stakes for that is that if you lose, you go 4-4, and the wheels might really come off in a 3-game losing streak where you'd have to think confidence would really be shaken. So, look, this is in a lot of ways the next 2 weeks are 2 of the most important weeks of Steve Sarkisian's coaching career. He has got to turn this around. Yes, sir.
Let me just say one last thing. I got on Orangebloods, and someone posted a thread that said players only meeting. And he starts it off and it says in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And one of the commenters goes, that will be pointless because the players would only show up for the first half of the meeting.
Oh, shit.
That's how ruthless it is in these streets right now, man. That's how ruthless.
You know what's weird? These have to be non-Texas fans, because I'm looking in the chats and this one guy's like, Ketch, you dream too much. We have no shot at Arlington. Who is saying that? just got finished talking about possibly going 4-4 in Waco. Like, I'm done.
You said it might be a big game, and I think everyone is like, big game for who? I mean, like it doesn't.
Like,
it's big for a Baylor side. It's not big for a Texas side.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is the dangerousness of that game is that if Baylor goes into that game 6-1 and ranked, they're playing for a spot in the Big 12 championship game. Texas shows up. Like, let me put it to you like this: who do you think is if Baylor beats BYU in 2 weeks? What's the point spread for Baylor in Texas?
If Baylor beats
BYU. If Baylor beats BYU, they'll be 6-1. They'll be in the top 25. They'll be playing a 4-3 Texas team. What's the point spread for that?
2.5 Baylor? 2.5 Baylor?
But my point that I was going to make, so in 2 weeks, Texas is a coin flip to be 4-4 after 8 games.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If they're even, it's coin flip. That means Texas is a bad coin toss away from this season getting away from them. Like I said, I don't want to talk about practice. I don't want to hear Steve Sarkisian talk about practice. But it's a big 2 weeks. He's got to figure out how to put Humpty Dumpty back together again for 4 quarters of football. Humpty Dumpty can't sit on the wall for 2 quarters smiling, drinking daiquiris, eating cotton candy, just flirting at girls. And then the second half starts and he falls off the wall and breaks and can't get put back together. Can't be that. So I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how in 2 weeks of practice you make that better. But there's a book on Texas right now, and it's not flattering. And the book is get it to the 3rd and 4th quarters, punch them really hard, and they will fall down and not get back up.
Here's the hard part, Catch. Sarkisian's got to go on the road recruiting during the bye week.
Today was a bad result. I think the moral of the story is today was a day they needed to win to continue to say we're moving forward. Today, the Texas football program took a step backwards. Ultimately, it remains to be seen how big of a step backwards they took back, but today was not a step forward kind of a day. And Anwar, my literally, other than giving you the chance to say the very final thing and saying goodbye. Matter of fact, I'll do it right now. Thanks to the Loewy Law Firm, my final I don't even have a final Anwar, I'm done. You got anything else? You're waving? We're out. Thanks for watching. We need 2 weeks off. You guys be good. Don't hurt each other. Later.